Welcome to the law, your money, and you. And I'm Roberta Saphire, an attorney in Sharon, Massachusetts.
And I'm Camille Barron, a health insurance advocate and financial coordinator, also in Massachusetts. And
today we are very fortunate in having Richie Gordon, that's Richie Gorden, who's not only a real estate broker, an assessor, and an appraiser, and he was on the show when we first began, and he looks exactly the same now. Welcome, welcome, welcome. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you. Nice to be here again after a couple of years, a few years anyways. I've lived in Sharon since 1978, and I'm a real estate agent for the past 30 plus years. And I've been elected to the Board of Assessors, and I also have been a licensed appraiser. So I wear three hats in the real estate industry, business, as an agent, assessor, and appraisal. So I have a good perspective from several different angles as far as property values and the history of valuation in real estate. So
great, it's nice to have you. You know, people get so confused about valuation of their home. And part of the reason is because you have three different measurements. You have the selling price of the home, which is the market value that goes up and down. And then you have the assessed value for tax purposes. And then you have the insurance value. And they're different. For instance, what it will cost to rebuild or replace your home for insurance purposes has nothing to do with the market value. Maybe you can shed some light on all of this confusion for people.
I hope so.
I hope so too. That's a good question.
Well, I guess market value, or the sale price of a house, or the value of a house, is really based on what a willing buyer and a willing seller, arm's length transaction, is willing to settle on for a purchase price or sale price of a house. So that establishes market value.
And that's largely supply and demand driven too,
supply
isn't
and
it?
demand.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. There's also a controlling factor there in that most transactions that are are subject to financing will involve an appraisal. So a lender would send out an independent appraisal, have an appraisal done on a property so that value is justified for the lender to lend their money on the purchase price of a house.
So does that mean they're somewhat related, those two?
They are related, very much so. If a property is agreed upon at a certain price, that appraised value should be justifying or supporting that value of the house. And typically it does support the value as well.
I have a question. I don't know if because this would be an insurance, and you said there's difference for insurance purposes, but I just got a renewal on a two-family that I know isn't worth more than $400, but you get a letter in the mail how they assessed it for more than it was assessed last year, or appraised according to them, and it was like almost $800,000. And the agency said, well, there's nothing they can do because they send out these things, and this is what if they had to do. I said, but that's just insurance too. They're just insuring the house. They're not insuring the land, and the land is separate. What is your answer to something like that?
Well, I don't have a good answer because I don't. That's one hat I don't wear. Is that of an insurance agent or company?
Oh, okay, answer.
The insurance value has mostly to do with the cost of construction, the costs of materials. So the idea is that you want to be able to replace the value. You want to be able to rebuild or replace the property. And it could be that we're in a market where the construction materials are more expensive, and that doesn't mean the house would sell for that.
Yeah.
But you have to insure it to at least 80% of the value, if not 100%, for insurance purposes.
Well, as far as I was concerned, it was like $300,000 more than it was worth. So I said to the agent, "I'll tell you what, I'll sell it to you for $500, and you can make the profit with $200."
Didn't go for that?
No, they didn't go for that. But anyway, in this new age of new taxes and things like that, does that have any effect on people wanting to sell or buy houses that you've found?
Well, I think not yet. I think the tax benefits of owning a home or buying a home and the real estate taxes that have been changed. I think that doesn't really direct the motivation for buying or selling. It's a benefit that there are tax benefits involved for owning a home, But I think thus far, anyways, I haven't seen any difference in terms of how people are buying or selling a home based on tax benefits or tax advantages. I think the reason to buy a home, for the most part, is to, enjoy a home and have a lifestyle. So it's less related to the actual tax savings than it is to home ownership in
Although
general.
now with the new tax law, in terms of deducting taxes for real
Right.
estate, and so how does that impact it?
Again, I think it doesn't impact it so much because it's like a side benefit of home ownership or home purchasing, versus the reason why people are buying homes is for family or lifestyle and comfortable place to live with a roof over their heads. So I think the tax benefit is secondary. I haven't seen any difference in the market to this point, anyways.
Now, we got some emails with the question, because they knew you were coming on, and they go, how do they assess the property? Do you ever get people calling up and say, how do you assess that for so low, or how do you assess it for so high?
Are you talking about the town assessment versus
Yeah.
market value?
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because the town assessed value should reflect market value. The issue really is that the town assessments, they're done almost 2 years prior to when the tax bill comes out. So just by nature, the Department of Revenue requires us as assessors to reassess and revalue the homes every 3 years, and it's inspected and changed every year. So when a house is sold, like in 2018, like right now, those selling prices won't be reflected in the town assessments until 2 years from now, because it'll be January of 2019 before they look at that, and then it'll be 1 year prior to that for the history of sales. So it lags by a year and a half to 2 years. That's why there's always a discrepancy with town assessed values versus what would be a market value. And it works on the other side when market's going up. Now assessments seem to be lower than what the actual market values would be. And then when you have a downturn in the market, sometimes it's reversed, and you have assessments that may be higher than market value, but that's like almost 2 years down the road. So it doesn't really match up on a day-to-day basis.
So if you're buying or selling a house, the assessed value, you have to keep in mind that it may not be actual. They have to have some...
Yeah, that's correct. So if somebody's looking to buy a house and they see the assessed value is like 480 and the market value is 580, that's very typical, but it doesn't mean that the house is only worth the 480 because it's lagging behind what the market is today.
Now, is this set by the state that you have to do this, or is it just local?
Well, the rules and regulations are set by the Department of Revenue for assessing. So they're all guidelines there, and they have to be revalued like every year, but it's based on sales that are...
Do you know how it
prior.
is in other states throughout the country? Do they go through the same thing?
I'm not sure. And obviously every town in Massachusetts has the same regulations to follow. But I'm not sure about other states as far as their assessments.
Well, you know what I hear a lot when you go to town meetings or just other conversations, although it doesn't directly affect it, but a lot of people in towns that have high tax rates, like our town does. This show airs in a lot of towns, but we in Sharon have, if not the highest, one of the highest tax rates. And you hear a lot of people saying, well, when my kids grew up, I moved out, or people, they say other people wait until their kids graduate and then they move because of the taxes.
Yeah. Do you see that a lot?
I
you have
do.
a lot of
I
people?
see that quite a bit, more so recently in the past like 5 years.
Really?
It's evident that sometimes their kid graduates in June and they're selling the house in June and be out by the summer.
Yeah.
So that they're kind of done paying taxes and they go to another community or another area that they're either downsizing or saving on taxes, but that's the kind of natural cycle of things.
Have you found there's more people looking to rent now, or is it the same?
I think it's about the same. That when the rules changed for financing and the mortgages became tighter, the banks were not lending as much, or the rules were more strict. I think more people didn't qualify for financing for a mortgage. Now they tend to. The banks have opened up a little bit, and it's more open to everybody that they can get financing programs for first-time buyers.
We have property in Sharon to rent, and this year and last year I find there's more people calling up because they're going to sell their house, but they want to stay in Sharon another 2 years or another 3 years till their last kid graduates, but they want to get the part about selling their house finished now. Have you run into that? You smile when you have.
On occasion. It depends how somebody feels about the market and where it's headed. Somebody thinks like the peak is now, they might want to sell now. Somebody thinks the peak would be in 2 years, they might want to wait and take advantage of higher values in 2 years from now.
But some of these people that have had their house for years and their mortgage payment is low, they find that the rents are higher than the mortgage payments.
Yeah, it's sticker shock these days for rentals.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, and a lot of people. You know what's funny? I still remember when we bought the manor. I still call it the manor. You know, that was 40 years ago. My mortgage payment was $524.22 a month, and that included the taxes.
What a deal.
Yeah, what a deal!
Right?
You couldn't even.
Well, 40 years ago, that was houses were what, under $100,000 probably. So. And
Oh
now
yeah,
they're
well,
5 times
I
that.
remember closing for my cousin off of Bay Road, a new house being built, 32,500. I think the same house that goes for about 800,000. Do you notice cost? It seems like the cost of houses, college, and what else have like gone way up as opposed to like
Cars?
yeah, cars too. They've gone way up too,
Sure.
haven't they? But I'll tell you what hasn't gone up is contact lenses.
Okay.
It's the same price.
Oh, really?
For contact lenses.
yeah.
Even newspapers have gone up. But getting back to it, so on the assessors, do you belong to like a group of other communities that of assessors, and they say, oh, this month we're going to do this, and so you implement. This is what we're implementing. I don't know. Does that work with assessors?
Well, it's mostly dictated by the Department of Revenue, the state at the state level for each town. Each town has its everybody's subject to the same rules and regulations and codes to follow. So I mean, there are organizations and conventions and things that assessors participate in.
How many
through the course.
assessors are there in Sharon? Is it 3?
Well, I'm on the Board of Assessors. There's
Yeah.
3 of us that serve on the board. We're elected by the town for 3-year terms. There's the administrative assessor, who's the chief assessor in town.
He goes out to each property?
He does do building permit work and follow-up work.
Oh, building permit.
Yeah.
Are there any houses that throw balloons at them and say, go away, or that they leave the outside of the house looking horrible so that they won't up the assessment? I know somebody that does that. The outside of the house is horrific, and they go, oh, we don't want the assessors coming in.
Well,
See the-
that's not quite a reason to keep your house in poor repair. It's
Well,
to
that house is
avoid the
very
assessor.
clear, just the front of it, so that they go, you don't even want to walk near it.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Not my house.
officially, the town is required to send out a representative on a 3-year cycle. So a third of the homes get done every year.
Do you hire an independent company?
Yes.
Is that who?
Yes.
That's
To do those
what
property
does it.
inspections, data inspections, and so forth, just to verify what's been done, what's not been done, the condition of the house, if anything's changed
Isn't
since the
that
prior
interesting?
inspection.
So tell Jim. I'm just kidding.
He doesn't have far to go.
No, I'm just kidding. Now, what about appraisers? Because that's a unique thing, appraisal. But as a real estate broker, so you offer the client another helpful choice. So when they think their house is worth $1 million, you can say, well, look, I just did appraisals on this, and it's, not worth
Yeah.
that.
Well, I think appraised value is market value. It should be. How you arrive at a market value for a property is based on what other properties have sold in the past 6 months or 8 months or up to a year. And the appraisal process is just a more formal process of stating how you arrive and compare a home in a neighborhood with others that have sold. So if you get 3 other homes that are similar to that house and they've sold for X during the past prior 6 months to a year, that provides support and value for market value for a house, for a real estate transaction.
Now,
So they're very much related and very similar. The appraised value of a house should be very much close to market value of a house.
Now, do you keep to the same neighborhood, or if there's nothing in the neighborhood, to the same town? Do you ever go out to other towns and compare?
The Technically, it should be based on 3 or 4 or 5 other homes within that neighborhood that are similar, but the odds of finding that happening is
Yeah.
slim, so you go to a different neighborhood, but it's usually within a town. If you get a unique property, sometimes you would go to a neighboring town to find a comparable sale. Like in Sharon, 2-family homes are not plentiful, so when a 2-family home gets sold and has to get appraised, sometimes the appraiser would go to a different town that has similar amenities to the town of Sharon, so that it's comparable. It's like Easton or Foxborough or surrounding towns would be somewhat suitable if that were to happen, that you couldn't find comparable homes within the community.
Now,
Right.
what do you consider a comparable town or comparable homes? Population or what? Because that's a question a lot of people have.
Yeah, it doesn't happen that often. Each community kind of serves unto itself in terms of comparable sales, and for single-family homes and condos, the town of Sharon has plentiful information and data to select comparable properties to do an appraisal and a market evaluation. It's just certain circumstances occasionally that you'd have to go outside of the town.
Now, the appraised values today, are they among the highest that we've seen maybe in 10 years?
Yeah, I would say we've
Good
the
question.
peak of the market was probably 05, 06. Then it took a downturn,
Uh-huh.
and I think property values in Sharon are kind of blasted well above and beyond the peak of 2006 at this point.
So getting back to questions that people have all the time, what in your mind are like the top 3 features of a home that will have an effect on the value? Say people are thinking about remodeling
Oh, yeah,
or
good
making some
question. I didn't
improvements.
Get to that.
I think the typical buyer these days is looking for a move-in condition, turnkey operation, not having to do
Really?
anything. Their typical buyer in Sharon probably has a family or young kids or something, or they're both working, so they have less time than previous generations would have had to repair or upgrade. So the houses that are in nice condition, updated, nothing to be done, those are the ones that are selling most quickly and at the higher prices.
Are people getting pods now? I think that's what they're called, and they put all the clutter in the pod so that the house looks better. Do you ever
Yes.
recommend
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
You recommend that?
Another hat that I wear is as a professional staging.
Oh, that's
my
fantastic.
God.
So
Wow.
I work a lot with people in terms of getting the house prepared for sale. Sometimes I can spend like 4 or 5 months in advance of somebody selling the house, getting them
Really?
ready to sell and decluttering and doing some repairs to make it in good shape and acceptable to the market.
Do you ever tell them empty out, move, and then
Yeah,
we'll just
I
rent
typically
some
end up with
furniture?
a 1 or 2 page punch list of things that recommending what they do, and pods are good because they can, any extra things that they've collected over the years, they can put in a pod and haul it away and just store it.
I think in
For the
my
next
case, the
move.
pod would be bigger than the house.
But it's good. It's good to get out of the house so
Oh,
that it's
Oh, wait
staged.
until you got to be kidding to tell you this one. But that's interesting that you do that. You wear a lot of hats, and
I do.
and you still look good. That's the thing.
It's from
without
wearing
a
all those
hat.
hats.
What would you say is the hardest one? Of your hats, it would be setting the price or getting the people
No,
to
I
get
think
the
I think
stuff
these
out?
days the challenge in the market these days is because inventory is so limited that the buyers have a challenge in terms of being not forced but almost forced to make a decision on a house very quickly because there's many buyers looking at houses,
Sure.
and they're to buy a house these days you have to put a good solid offer together. You can't lowball properties because it's a seller's market. So it's a challenge for buyers. Sometimes they get shut out of being able to buy a house for a while because they get outbid by other buyers as well, because there's a lot of buyers and limited properties.
And you see a lot of offers higher than the selling price?
In some cases, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Now years ago they used to brokers used to say, I don't want anybody looking for a Sunday ride. So now I know you meet them. See, he's smiling again. But do you pre-qualify? Do the people have to get pre-qualified? Like before you start showing it, you'll go, well, where's your mortgage commitment letter? Didn't they sometimes do that?
Yeah,
or something
typically
like
anybody that's
Yeah.
seriously interested in buying a house, because if they see a house on a Sunday and they're going to be making an offer Sunday night these days, they have to be pre-approved. Otherwise, the seller wouldn't really seller and their agent wouldn't really look at that as a qualified offer because they wouldn't have a pre-approval with them.
Yes, it is.
So it's very important to have a
Well,
pre-approval up front.
One of my sons is a broker, and he'll see when a property comes up, he'll say, this will be gone in 2 days. And sure enough, it's gone in 2 days. This will be gone in 5 days. Sure enough, it's gone in 5 days. This one, he'll say, offer them, 50,000 less, or offer them 25,000 more. And so you must too, being at it for so long, because you're older than he is. Do you have that in your head, calculating, oh, if you put it at this price, it's going to be gone in a few days. If you do it, this is going to take months for what you're doing, or unless you get the pod or whatever. Did you find that happens?
I do. I mean, the houses can be priced so that they sell quickly and get multiple offers, and sometimes sellers, prefer to do it the other way and say, okay, well, let's try for the maximum and see if it's there in the market, and then adjust from there if they are not getting the activity that they would have hoped for.
We're almost to You've Got to Be Kidding, which is a brand new bag for a brand new story. I got a story, but what I want to ask you is, have you ever had people say to you, well, I don't want to do the pod, and they go, well, do you ever have people say, well, you don't know what you're talking about? I mean, do you ever have any stories like that?
That somebody's told me what I don't know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. How do you answer them? What do you do?
There's some
What do you do with
some
those
people that own a home that they've been there for a long time,
God,
and they want to sell their house as is. They don't want to go through the whole process. And the price might reflect the fact that it's as is, but homes as is will sell as well. You just won't sell for the optimal price, but they will sell.
How do you get them to go from, well, I don't want to do this, to okay, I'll do it?
Well, I think there's usually an analysis done, so that here's the probable selling price if you do all these things, and here's the probable selling price if you don't do anything. And sometimes it's a matter of how much they want to invest in a house to get to that point, and sometimes they choose not to do anything, and we'll sell it as it is.
Well, I know of a couple who got the pod there only because their kids rented the pod for them, and there was an open house, and they got all the stuff. The kids got all the stuff into the pod, and then after that weekend, little by little, they took the stuff and brought it. And I go, oh my God, you got to be kidding! You got to be kidding! And to this day, it's still sitting.
Really?
The pod, the kids were tired of paying for the pod, but the house is still cluttered. They said, I don't know if they'll ever be able to sell it unless the does the Board of Health come in and condemn? Have you ever tried to sell a hoarder's house? You've got to be kidding.
Really?
I have sold a house like that, a couple of them in my career, so.
Oh, you actually got it sold with the hoarding stuff inside?
Yeah.
Or they didn't have to get the...
Well, again, it does affect what the purchase the selling price would be. So there's a factor there in terms of finances and money involved. But
have you said to them, you've got to be kidding? You've got to get rid of this. You can't even walk in here. Was it one of those houses that you couldn't even walk in?
Yes.
So how did you get them to unhoard it?
In some cases, I didn't. It just as
how could
is.
It pass inspection?
It's just kind of clutter. It's not really defective house. Not structural problems. It's just a house that has a lot of stuff in it. And I've had houses that I've sold, and people leave the house with the stuff in it, and the price reflects the fact that the buyer has to come in and empty the house also. So it's all based on money, dollars, really.
But I'm talking about the real hoarders where they got dead animals underneath all the clutter and everything.
I don't think I've gotten involved with.
Oh, you haven't had any of those shows? That's where the Board of Health comes in, and that's when they start to declutter it. When the Board of Health tells them you
forced
either
to do that.
we're going to you can't come back in here.
Right.
But that's funny. So the clutter. We bought a house once. It took about 3 weeks to clear all the stuff out that they left. But that's interesting.
Sometimes it's part of the process. Yes.
Yeah, but that's interesting. So do you ever say to people, look, remember this one? They left it like that, and the other one did this, and we were able to get them 75,000 more.
Oh, sure. That's part of the analysis of what I provide people is that here's your value as is, and here it is as improved or as decluttered, and sometimes it's a mix of the two, some compromise in the middle.
What would you say is the one thing that makes the home? Because people go, they look at the furniture too. it's like they see the furniture before the house. Do you ever like what would be one of the nice things to do? Like put fresh flowers in or not fresh
Well,
flowers?
I've had houses where we've removed everything from the house and staged it with furnishings, you know, from a professional designer. So that's the extreme, but new construction is done that way a lot. And some houses, they show better without people's personal possessions in
Yeah,
there. So we would take
the pictures
vacate
down
the
from
house
the wall.
and put in, you know, designer furniture from a staging perspective.
One last question that I have is condos versus houses. A while back, it was the condos were not, the pricing and the sales were not as good as for single-family homes. Is that still the case now?
No, I think the condo market was, you know, when the market took a downturn, the condo market suffered more than
Really?
residential single families. But now I think the market is such that a lot of people that would prefer not to do the work or have the work done, so it's an easier lifestyle. They pay the condo fee, but that kind of compensates for the savings that
But
they don't
some
have
of
to
the condo
spend.
fees are outrageous, though.
Yeah, but it's a lifestyle.
One final question before we end. What size homes would you say go more? The 3-bedroom homes, 4-bedroom homes, or 4-bedroom with the office space, or open space? Or do people like the open area, the colors? What colors?
I would say yes to all that.
Oh,
Really?
okay.
People, you know, different buyers have different reasons for buying
Oh,
and
so it
selling.
doesn't
So,
matter.
you know, I've sold 1-bedroom homes and 2-bedroom homes. It all depends on the market. Every home, if you think about it, every home gets sold to
But
somebody.
well, as long as the price. But aren't there more people looking for 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms?
Well, in a community
now?
like Sharon, we have people coming in family oriented. Typically 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom homes are more attractive to families, you know, with kids. But there's a buying population that have no kids and just
They
want
still want
2
a big
bedrooms
home.
or 3 bedrooms and don't need the extra space. So
That's interesting. That's so interesting. Well, the main event, this was a brand new bag, and it's ripped.
Already.
So all is not glitters that is gold. All gold doesn't glitter.
Well, I think we have to wrap up now.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
This has been great.
Very
You know,
interesting.
It's amazing that it is such a dynamic market from
is.
just 1 year to a couple of years later. And that's why it's great that we have guests like Richie who come back.
Yeah.
That even after
Yeah.
we do what we do, you still come back.
dynamic, you're right. It's dynamic, and that's what's so much fun about the business. It
Yeah.
changes day to
Absolutely.
day.
Fascinating.
So to our
Yeah.
viewers, we just want to say thank you for watching. And of
Yes.
course, you may have questions about real estate. By all means, let us know, and we'll be sure that we get the question over to Richie Gordon, who's been a wonderful guest today.
Thank you
Yes.
for having me.
If you have questions or you want to give us ideas about future topics, please let us know, because we do listen.
We
Because
do.
remember, this is your show. The law, your money, and
And
you.
you.